Welcome back to the Deep Dive. I want to kick things off today with a massive paradox.
Oh!
Yeah, it's one of those things that when you really stop and look at the timeline, it makes absolutely no sense on paper.
Okay, I'm intrigued.
We are looking at a piece of technology that was officially discontinued way back in 1984. It was a total commercial flop.
The complete flop.
They pulled it from the shelves because nobody wanted it. And yet, here we are in 2026, 42 years later, and this one machine, it still defines the sound of electronic music.
It's such a remarkable case study. You're talking, of course, about the Roland TB-303.
The little silver box, honestly, if you look at a picture of it, it kind of looks like a calculator that just gave up halfway through.
It really does. It's
Yeah.
plastic. It has those weird little buttons. It doesn't look legendary at all.
And what's so fascinating here is we're not just talking about some vintage synth that people collect for nostalgia, like an old film camera that just sits on a shelf.
No, not at all. We are talking about a tool that started as a, quote, failed machine and somehow became, well, maybe the most influential synthesizer in history.
And that is the mission for today's deep dive. We've got a massive stack of articles and retrospectives here, and we're going to unpack how this plastic box, which was meant to accompany guitar players...
And badly, at that.
Badly, right. How it became this cultural icon. We're going to see how that squelchy sound transcended genres, sparked a whole industry of clones, and somehow ended up in art museums.
And I think the key theme here, the thing to keep in mind, is the idea of unintended consequences. This isn't just a story about a circuit board. It's a story about how culture reclaims technology.
I love that framing. So let's get into the sound itself before we track its journey. Because most people, when they hear TB-303, they immediately think one thing.
Acid house.
Acid house. The smiley face, the late 80s, the whole rave scene.
And that's the origin story, for sure. That's ground zero. But the research we're looking at today suggests that if we just limit the 303 to acid house, we are missing the huge picture.
So it's not a one-trick pony.
And not even close. It's a genre chameleon.
Okay, let's unpack this then, because what is actually happening inside that box to make that sound? Why is it so distinct? It doesn't sound like a piano. It doesn't sound like a normal bass.
That's a great question. To understand why it could jump between genres, you have to understand its architecture. The 303 uses a filter, specifically an 18 decibel per octave low-pass filter that just behaves very strangely.
Strangely how?
Well, most filters are designed to be, smooth. But this one, when you turn up the resonance knob, it emphasizes a frequency until it almost whistles. It starts to self-oscillate.
Okay.
But the real magic, the thing that makes it sound so liquid, is the interaction between two things, the accent and the slide.
The slide, that's that rubber band effect, right?
Okay.
Where one note sort of stretches into the next one?
Precisely. On a normal keyboard, you play a C, then you lift your finger and play a D. Two separate events.
Right.
But on a 303, if you program in a slide, the pitch just glides from C to D without the sound ever stopping.
It creates that elastic, almost vocal quality.
Exactly. It sounds like the machine is talking to you. Or, sometimes screaming.
So that talking quality is what allowed it to move beyond just 80s house music.
It went everywhere. Once that texture was unleashed, it just refused to stay in its lane.
Okay, so where else?
Well, take techno. Specifically, there's a whole subgenre called acid techno.
Is that different from acid house? I feel like people sometimes use those terms interchangeably.
Oh, they're very distinct. Acid house is funky. It's got a groove, a swing to it. Acid techno is militaristic.
Militaristic.
Yeah, it's harder, faster, more aggressive. The 303 is still the lead instrument, but in techno, it's often so distorted it sounds like, buzzing electricity.
So it's the same DNA, but a totally different attitude.
A completely different attitude. It's a weapon, not just a groove tool.
Right. And I'm seeing in these notes it became a staple in trance music, too.
Absolutely. If you listen to psytrance, pretty much every track has that rolling, hypnotic bass line.
And that's the 303.
That is almost always a 303 or one of its clones. In trance, they use the sequencer to create these really rapid-fire 16th note patterns that give the track all its kinetic energy. It just drives everything forward.
Okay, here's one from the research that actually surprised me. Jungle and drum and bass.
Ah, yes.
When I think of those genres, I think of massive, clean sub-bass and those fast, chopped-up break beats. I don't really think of the acid squelch.
And this is where the production technique gets really clever. In jungle and drum and bass, producers often use the 303 not for the high-pitched, screaming leads we just talked about.
But for what?
For the sub-bass rolling underneath it all.
So they're filtering it way down, stripping away that resonance.
Exactly. The 303 has a very specific envelope, which is the shape of the sound over time. It's very plucky. It hits hard and decays fast.
Which would let it cut through a dense mix without getting muddy.
It's so tight, it can move fast without blurring the drums. So it's basically hiding in plain sight. It's providing the low end, but because it's not screaming at you, you don't even realize it's the acid box.
And it goes even broader than that, doesn't it?
Oh, yeah. Hip-hop producers have been sampling classic acid tracks for decades. And even mainstream pop.
Pop? Really? That seems like a stretch. Pop is so polished, and the 303 is famously, gritty.
You would be so surprised. Pop producers are masters of borrowing textures that trigger a subconscious recognition in you. They sneak that little squelch in because it's so instantly identifiable.
So it adds a bit of edge.
A bit of edge, a bit of cool to a track that might otherwise be very sterile. It's like sonic branding. You hear that sound and your brain just goes, oh, okay, this is a party track.
It's almost like the denim of electronic music. You can dress it up, dress it down, wear it with anything.
That is a fantastic analogy. But, this ubiquity, it created a massive economic problem.
Right. The scarcity issue. Basic supply and demand.
Roland stopped making these things in 1984. They only made about 10,000 units total. That's it.
A finite supply.
But as the 90s and 2000s rolled on, demand just skyrocketed.
I remember seeing listings back then. By the 2000s, you'd see these battered original units selling for over $2,000, sometimes even $3,000.
Which created this huge barrier to entry. I mean, Acid House was born because the 303 was cheap junk in pawn shops. Kids in Chicago could buy them for $50.
But by 2005, if you're a kid in your bedroom wanting to make acid tracks, you can't afford the real thing.
No way. And this created a vacuum in the market.
And of course, the market filled it. Enter the clones.
The economics of nostalgia. An entire industry just sprang up to mimic this one little plastic box.
It's actually wild when you look at the list of companies. It wasn't just big corporations, it was boutique makers in their garages.
It started with hardware. You had machines like the Cyclone Analogic TT303, which was a startlingly faithful reproduction. Then the open source community got involved with the XXBZOX project.
The XCOXBOX, I never knew how to say that. It's XOXBox.
Yeah, written in, lead speak. And those are great because they were often DIY kits. You'd buy a bag of parts and have to solder it all yourself.
Which democratized the sound all over again.
It did. And eventually, even Roland realized they were leaving money on the table, and they released their own reissue, the TV03.
But the real game changer had to be software, right?
The software explosion in the mid-2000s changed everything. Suddenly, you didn't need a soldering iron or $2,000. You just needed a plug-in.
Like Audio Realism Baseline or D16 Facion.
Those became industry standards. And today, practically every major software synth suite comes with a 303 emulation.
Yeah.
It's just a preset now.
But this brings up a big question, and I see it all over the forums and articles we reviewed, the purist debate.
Ah, yeah.
There's always someone who says it's not the same. So be honest. Yeah. Is there actually a difference, or are people just hearing at their wallets?
Well, this is where we get into the magic of analog circuitry.
Mm-hmm.
The purists argue that digital emulations, no matter how good, they struggle to capture the specific chaos of the original units.
Chaos.
Yeah, you have to remember, the original 303s were built with cheap parts. They aged, capacitors dried out, they drifted out of tune.
So the argument is that the flaws are actually the feature.
In a way, yes. The purists believe the magic lies in those imperfections. The way the analog circuits react unpredictably when you crank the resonance. Digital is often too clean, too perfect. There's a randomness in the actual electrical current that code has a hard time faking.
It's funny, isn't it? We spent decades trying to perfect digital audio, super high sample rates, zero noise floor. And then we spend just as much time trying to program the mistakes back in to make it feel real.
It just speaks to the human desire for character over perfection. We want our machines to have a little bit of a soul, even if that soul is just a leaky capacitor.
So we've established it's everywhere. There are a million ways to get the sound, but let's do a reality check. We're in 2026. Is this just a retro throwback thing? Is it like wearing bell bottoms?
Not at all. It is very much alive. If you look at the timeline of electronic music, the 303 sound is cyclical. It wasn't just one boom in the 80s.
Yeah.
There was a huge revival in the late 90s with a big beat sound. Think the Chemical Brothers. Another one in the late 2000s with Electro House. And we saw a massive one in the early 2020s.
It's like a comet that keeps coming back around.
And with each pass, it picks up new ideas. In our current era, we have artists who have taken that sound into completely new emotional territories.
So who should we be listening to now if you want to hear the state of the 303 in 2026?
Well, sources point to artists like Tin Man. He's fascinating because he took the acid sound, which is usually aggressive or trippy, and he made it melancholic.
Really?
Yeah, he uses it in this orchestral way, almost like a cello. It's beautiful and sad, which aren't words you usually associate with acid. Then you've got artists like DJ Boring or Legovelt who keep that gritty lo-fi aesthetic alive. And of course, huge acts like B.I.C.I.P.
B.I.C.I.P. is massive. They sell out stadiums.
And they use those 303 textures to create these huge euphoric anthems. They aren't trying to sound like 1988 Chicago. They sound like 2026.
It's interesting because for a kid starting to produce music now, in 2026, the 303 isn't retro. They weren't even born in the 80s or 90s.
Exactly. To them, it's just a cool sound.
It's the fresh years concept.
That's it. Every few years, a new generation discovers the machine. They don't have the baggage of the past. They don't know the so-called rules of acid house. They just hear a sound they like and do something new with it. And that's what keeps it alive.
Speaking of doing something new with it, I was really drawn to this section of our research on the hacker spirit.
Yeah.
Because it turns out people didn't just play this instrument, they physically attacked it.
They absolutely did. This is such a crucial part of the legacy. The 303 spawned this vibrant DIY modification culture. You have to remember, the original unit was very limited. It didn't even have MIDI.
We should probably explain that. What is MIDI?
MIDI is the universal language that lets a keyboard talk to a computer or a drum machine talk to a synth. It keeps everything in time.
And the 303 didn't have it.
Nope. It had an older system called DIN Sync, which was proprietary to Roland. So if you wanted it to sync with a drum machine from a different company,
yeah,
you had a big problem.
So what did people do?
They started opening them up. They would circuit bend them. They drilled holes in the casing to add new knobs and switches. They soldered in new inputs for CV gate, which is a way of controlling pitch with voltage.
That sounds incredibly risky. You're taking this discontinued, increasingly expensive machine and just taking a power drill to it.
Totally risky. If you slip with the soldering iron, you could fry a chip that isn't made anymore. You could brick the machine completely. But that is the hacker-maker culture. The philosophy was that the limitations of the original design weren't roadblocks. They were challenges to overcome.
It's rebellious. It's very punk rock.
It is. It connects the 303 to this broader history of hacking. Users took a closed consumer product and forced it to do things the manufacturer never, ever intended. There's a famous mod called the Devilfish, which added tons of distortion and filter range. It turned the 303 into a monster.
So the 303 became a canvas for experimentation. It wasn't just a tool, it was a platform.
And that reflects the spirit of Acid House itself. That scene was built on DIY ethics, illegal warehouse parties, white label records, Xeroxed flyers. The mods were just the physical manifestation of that same attitude. We don't accept the rules you gave us.
This brings us to what might be the most surprising part of this whole deep dive. We've gone from underground clubs to hacker workbenches, and now we're heading to the museum.
This is where the story really solidifies its legendary status. Yeah. The TB303 is no longer just an instrument. It is a cultural symbol.
The sources gave this really powerful analogy that stuck with me. They said the 303 is to electronic music what the Fender Stratocaster is to rock music.
It's a bold claim, but I think it holds up. Think about the Stratocaster. You can show a silhouette of that guitar to someone who doesn't even play music, and they know it. They know it means rock and roll.
And the 303 has achieved that same visual status.
It has. That little silver box with the black knobs is visual shorthand for electronic music.
And it's not just us saying this. The institutions agree.
Correct. The ultimate validation has arrived. The Museum of Modern Art MoMA in New York City has acquired TB303s for their design collection.
That is just wild.
It's also featured in major electronic music museums in Frankfurt and Berlin. It is now officially recognized as a historically significant design object, sitting right alongside, Eames chairs and Bauhaus lamps.
I just love the irony of that. I really do. Imagine you're a Roland engineer in 1984. You're looking at the terrible sales figures. You're canceling the product line.
You're thinking, well, that was a failure. Back to the drawing board.
Right. And then you fast forward to 2026, and that failure is sitting in a glass case at MoMA.
It is the ultimate irony. But it also speaks to the unpredictability of art. The engineers designed it to sound like a bass guitar so a guy in a pub band could practice.
And it failed miserably at that. It sounds nothing like a bass guitar.
Not even close. If I heard a bass player and he sounded like a 303, I'd fire him on the spot.
Me too.
Exactly. But in failing to be a bass guitar, it succeeded in being something completely new. It created a sound that had never existed on Earth before. A sound that felt like the future.
It's a beautiful thought. So let's bring this all together. What is the big takeaway here?
Looking at this whole journey, We see a machine that was discontinued after just 3 years, but it ended up shaping over 40 years of music history.
A legacy that just refuses to die.
And I think the core lesson is the triumph of vibe over technical perfection. The 303 is not a good synthesizer by traditional standards. It's hard to program. The sequencer is a nightmare. It's limited, it's weird.
But it has character.
It has a vibe. And in art, vibe always wins. It failed as a product, but it succeeded as a revolution.
Perfectly put. Before we sign off, I want to leave you, our listener, with a thought to mull over. We spent this whole time talking about how the 303 became a legend because people used it wrong.
They ignored the manual.
Completely. They twisted the knobs until it screamed, so it raises a provocative question for our own lives, doesn't it?
It does.
Look at your own work, your own tools, your own methods. What failed tool or wrong method are you ignoring? What if the thing you think is broken or useless is actually just waiting for you to misuse it in the right way? What if the next big revolution in your life is hiding inside a mistake you're trying to fix?
That's a fascinating thing to consider. Sometimes the wrong way is the only way forward.
Thanks for diving deep with us today. We'll see you on the next one.
Goodbye, everyone.